It was an admission that stunned listeners and turned a Toronto mayor into an international headline.
You asked me a couple questions, and what were those questions?
Do you smoke crack cocaine?
Exactly. Yes, I have smoked crack cocaine.
When,
But
sir?
no, do I? Am I an addict? No.
When have you
Have I
smoked crack
tried it? Probably in one of my drunken stupors, probably approximately about a year ago. I answered your question.
Former Toronto
You
Mayor
asked
Rob
the question
Ford
properly,
publicly
I'll
admitting
answer.
to smoking
Yes,
crack
I've made
cocaine.
mistakes.
Now a new book is promising the behind-the-scenes details that led up to that shocking statement. Mayor Rob Ford, Uncontrollable, is written by Ford's former chief of staff, Mark Towhey. He joins us in studio. Thanks for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
With this. And I want to start at your beginning, which was because you ask yourself in the book, you know, why am I writing this book? And while there's a couple of different answers, you know, you wrote it for one reason, one main reason, to get the story out, kind of for you.
In part for me, yeah, very much so. I mean, I went through a year after leaving Ford's office, a pretty dark year of depression and just not being able to get myself back together. And part of writing the book is a bit cathartic. The other thing that I realized after the other night, I sort of had it as a concept in my mind, but it hadn't really fully crystallized even until about 2 days ago when a former staffer, two former staffers actually called me after having read the book and said thank you, because a lot of them are going through the same types of things that I went through, and in fact a lot of them much worse than I have. So I think for them it's a bit cathartic as well.
And you said it did take some time for you to decide if you were going to write the book at all. Was one of those concerns, you know, coming out with something like this on the heels of everything that's happened to this guy, that you would be taking advantage of to make money from somebody who had an addiction problem?
That was part of it. I very quickly realized there's no way to make money in publishing, so that became a non-issue. But it took me a year, really, to get through to this decision to make, to be able to write the book. And part of my first concern was, you know, I felt very strongly that I was in a position of trust and had to keep his confidences, regardless of how, you know, horrific some of them were. But frankly, during that year, a lot of those confidences became public knowledge anyway. A lot of them came out through police documents that were released in the court. In fact, by and large, most of the things that I was referring to when I said my advice to the mayor is advice for the mayor. And then the media did a very good job of uncovering other things. In fact, I learned a lot of things that I didn't know while I was there, based on the media coverage afterwards as well, and sort of started putting the dots together. But so that was one of the concerns. The other one was really, is there a way to tell this story in what I would think an ethical and a fair way? And I think the book has a lot of stuff in it that if you don't like Rob Ford, there's a lot of stuff in there that will reaffirm the fact that you don't like him. If you do like him, though, there's a lot of stuff in that book which shows, you know, he was on the right track for a long time and did what I would argue is a lot of good stuff.
One of the criticisms is that you were an enabler during his time. Doug, very close to him, another part of his inner circle. Did you all enable him?
It depends what you mean by enabling, and that's certainly there's been a lot of criticism that we were enabling his addiction. I don't think we were, and if you read through the book, I think you will see what we did during each stage. The first year that I was with him was on the campaign. He was clean and sober. The first year he was in office, he was, for all I could tell, clean and sober and did very well. By the end of 2011, the beginning of 2012, something happened. And I honestly don't know what it was, whether it was stress or there was something else that we weren't aware of that sort of tripped him over, and it started getting worse. And as I explained through the book, here's what we were seeing at the time. And it was a bit like living life in a mystery, where the lights would go down and lights would come back up again and somebody was gone. And we had to figure out what was happening. And we recognized the alcohol issue first, and we're trying to manage that. And we actually brought people in, I talk in the book, to try to put with him to help him. And then later on, it was clear that it wasn't just alcohol, there was something else. And so we stepped it up and tried to provide other assistance quietly within the office with him. And as you read through the book, you'll see that got to the point where it was either fire me or go to rehab.
Some of the salacious parts of the book that have been out there over the past little while include, you know, a horrific argument between the mayor and his wife, and where a gun, you know, is mentioned. There's children around, that kind of thing. I want to ask you, though, since that's out there, what about Doug? What about your relationship with Doug and Doug's relationship with Rob? Because you say in the book, you know, he controlled him, and that worked sometimes, and it was in the way at others.
Yeah, Doug and Rob have a probably a typical brother relationship. I remember fighting a lot with my brother, and certainly like brothers anywhere, when they're together on their own, they very often don't see eye to eye, and they very often will take that out in very vocal arguments. When they're outside in public, it's Team Ford. And if you pick on one, you've picked on the family. And they all stand side by side. You see it in Rob running across council floor after I left, trying to protect his brother from something he perceived to be a threat. The one thing I will say about Doug is Doug would take shots at Rob about the weight challenge and thing. He would pick fun a little bit of his little brother, but Rob would never do the same. And that did get him into some trouble. You know, we talked about in the book with Doug's plan for the waterfront. Now, that wasn't initially Rob's plan for the waterfront, but once Doug started taking flack about it, it became Rob's plan.
As far as Doug goes, you know, what do you think of a potential run for a Conservative leadership?
He has, I think he would have the ability to attract members across the country from a party perspective. I don't know whether he can raise the money unless he wants to finance it himself. Whether he's the right personality for the Conservative Party, I'll leave up to the Conservative Party, but I think reading the book, there's a fair bit of insight in terms of how he operates, so that might be good reading.
So Rob Ford, then now, do you like him?
My life would be much easier if I could get angry and just hate this guy, but I can't. He has an inherent likability that's been a key to his success, and yeah, so you know, every time somebody takes a shot at him in public, even to this day, I kind of smile and chuckle when he gets them back.
But you haven't talked to him about this book.
We haven't spoken since he fired me.
Mark, thank you for coming in.
It's my pleasure.
We invited Councillor Rob Ford, of course, on the program and requested a statement from both him and his Chief of Staff. We did not get a response.